If I die once, it's over. My health doesn't regenerate naturally, and Herobrine is back in the game. Consider following me on all my other social media and subscribing so you don't miss out on anything. My 3 goals for these next 100 days: get a full stack of diamond blocks, raid a woodland mansion, and bring a gift to Herobrine in an attempt to befriend him. Let's go. On the night of day 300, I went inside and started organizing all of my stuff when I got one of the worst messages that you can receive in the game. One of my dogs went up in flames. I ran outside and saw Herobrine running off with a flint and steel in hand. As I frantically punched the flames out, another one of my dogs died. There was still one more dog to save, and I did not have a water bucket in my inventory. But as I stood there helpless, the flame went out before the dog died. So I sat him back down and went outside of my little base to see if Herobrine was still around. As I scanned the wheat field, I saw him making a break for the forest behind my kingdom walls. From day 301 to 303, I was hard at work designing this cemetery for the dogs that Herobrine burned up, as well as the other dogs and the iron golems that fell in battle during the raid of 200 days. I wanted them to have a peaceful resting place with guards always on watch. The next day, I decided that all of these fallen troops should get a proper funeral. So I spent that day bringing over villagers from the village breeder. And since I wasn't quite ready for the funeral, I spawned in some iron golems to protect the villagers while I was away. Day 305 and 306, I flew over to the nearby swamp, and during the day I collected vines, and at night I tried my best to collect all the slime that I could. Although they were accompanied by a lot of friends. I needed slime to make leads that I could use as dog collars in my cemetery. And when I finally felt like I had a good amount of slime, I headed back to my base and realized that this slime came with the price of some golden apples and health potions. So I needed to craft up some more. As I began crafting some up, it started raining, and I thought this would be the perfect time for a funeral. It was a sad and dreary day as I rode Coco over to the cemetery, and when I arrived, I asked this librarian if he would deliver the eulogy.
We are gathered here today to mourn the loss of those fallen in battle while protecting our great village. They will be deeply missed, but I still don't understand how the world will only end if Corinthius dies and none of us.
Hey man, stick to the script.
These valiant soldiers died so that we may live. I think we should have Corinthius build a monument in their honor.
And just like that, the funeral was over and I had a monument to build. But before I could get to building, I needed to get a lot more stones. So I got the Silk Touch pickaxe that I forgot about in 300 days, threw some better enchantments on it, and began organizing my ender chest. I don't know about you, but I like using shulker boxes to organize things in my ender chest, especially with the valuables box. So I threw all my good stuff in a shulker box and put it in my ender chest for safekeeping, and look how much space there is now. Then I crafted up myself another ender chest to always carry on me, because now I had a Silk Touch pickaxe to pick it up with without breaking it. Next, I went to my iron farm and saw that it was completely full, so I took a little bit of time to expand the storage, and on day 309 to 310, I spent trading all of this iron for some sweet emeralds. I love being able to turn free iron into emeralds, because once you have villagers set up, you can buy almost anything that you need. Once I had a good amount of emeralds, I headed on over to my farmer villager, and I bought as many golden carrots as I could. I still had a lot of emeralds, and I remembered that you need a farmer in your villager breeder to make it work. So I headed on over to him, unlocked golden carrots, and between these two farmer villagers, I spent almost all of my emeralds. Although the villagers did make fun of me for buying all of these cookies. So I went inside and cheered myself up with a pickaxe shuffle. Not as cool as the shovel shuffle in Hermitcraft, but it still did make me laugh. On day 311, I headed back into the Nether and decided to fix the entrance to my ancient debris mine so I don't hit my head every time on the way down. I was on the hunt for 5 ancient debris, and I also did find a lot of gold, but I want you to try to guess down in the comments what I would need 5 ancient debris for. After a little bit of aggressive mining, I found my first piece of ancient debris, but the next vein that I found had 4 pieces of ancient debris, and I'm pretty sure that's the highest amount that you can find in one vein. When I made it back to the overworld, I had found more gold that I left in my furnace. I really don't know why I keep forgetting about that. Once I crafted all my gold ore, I realized that I only needed 4 pieces of netherite scrap, and I actually needed 1 block of ancient debris. But luckily, before it was all finished, I grabbed one out of the furnace. And with a single ingot crafted, I had myself a Silk Touch netherite pickaxe. That's 4 ancient debris used. Did you guess what the last one was was for, if you watched my previous videos then you probably did, we have ourselves another patron. Thank you Bambits for your support. On day 313 I headed down into the mine to get diamonds for my first challenge and stone for the monument that I had to build. While I was mining, I came across this mine shaft, and after a little while of searching I realized that I had mostly already looted this one. By the end of this long mining session I had got myself a little bit over 2 stacks of diamonds. Once I craft them all together, I had 14 blocks that I could add to my pile. On day 320 I headed out of my mine and things looked a little bit different than usual. At first I couldn't put my finger on it, but as I started making my way through the village I realized that there was birch trees planted everywhere. I don't know if Herobrine knows that normal birch trees are my least favorite tree, but whether he knew or not, he went around planting several birch trees all over the village and all over my builds. So I had to spend the rest of that day chopping down all of these trees. Then I spent the next few days building up this dog monument. I made it sit down overlooking my kingdom, but the time lapse didn't look too good because there was a lot of trial and error. After almost an hour of building, I finally had a good final product. On day 324, in an attempt to hide all the green wool spammed around my base, I went around using all the bone meal I had to grow grass and flowers on all the bare land that I could. From day 325 to 327, I spent turning this cute little hill in the corner of my kingdom into a small beginner's sugarcane farm. I didn't use a video for this farm, so it took a little bit of trial and error to get it just right. When the sugarcane grows high enough for the observer to sense it, it activates all the pistons at once, which breaks all the sugarcane and causes it to fall down into the hoppers. And the hoppers all lead down into these double chests on the ground. With my sugarcane farm built, I had an automatic way to get some paper, meaning I was one step closer to getting myself unlimited rockets. The other ingredient to rockets is of course gunpowder, and I was not ready to make a creeper farm quite yet. So I got to work building up this mob farm, and this one I did use a video for, so the link to the tutorial will be in the description. It is a really easy farm to build, so if I can do it, I'm sure you can do it too. But while you're building, I would recommend wearing an elytra, because this fall might have even killed me. Even with an elytra, I was still pretty close to death. Once you get the mob funnel built, you just have to fill in the platforms, add in some trapdoors and some water, and give it a nice little roof. Also, don't forget to take out all of the torches inside, or no mobs will really be able to spawn. And just like that, on the night of day 330, I had finished my mob farm, but I got attacked by a skeleton and Coco got in the way. So we went to my little storehouse and got him some hay to heal up. On the morning of day 331, I headed on over to my mob farm to see how efficient it was working. And that's when I realized that some of the mobs weren't dying when they hit the ground. So I moved the bottom of the farm down 1 block. And when I headed into my sugarcane farm to check on that, it sounded like I heard an enderman. When I turned the corner, I found this guy trapped in my farm, and my sugarcane farm was working perfectly. I also put some hoppers down underneath my mob farm so it would funnel all of the items down into my sugarcane farm. That way all my gunpowder and sugarcane would all be in one place. I grabbed the ingredients to make a rocket, and I was so excited to be able to fly again. I would love to one day be considered a professional Minecraft player, but when I do things like make all my sugarcane into sugar instead of paper, I realize I'm still really far away from being a professional. So I grabbed some sugarcane from the other side and finally made myself some rockets. Once I had my rockets in hand, I grabbed my elytra and took to the skies in search of a pig. I really wanted to find myself another pet to use as a comfort animal to make me feel better after losing so many dogs. But as I was leading this little pig home, I heard him fall into a pit, and I really didn't feel like getting him out, so I went and searched for a different pig. And I managed to find one in the swamp behind my castle walls. This time I brought a saddle and a carrot on a stick to ensure that my pig doesn't fall into any holes. On our way back home, we had a lot of crazy adventures. We managed to cross this river together when I totally thought that he was going to drown when I was riding on top of him. We also bullied this chicken by throwing its own egg at it and made our way over to the cemetery where the villagers still were. They probably wanted to go back inside and probably didn't appreciate being trapped outside for so long. I'm honestly surprised that they're still alive, but me and this pig had our own story to write. And as the sun began to set, we made it back to my well-lit base where it was a lot safer. And once inside, I got a name tag and named my pig Reuben in honor of the hero pig that saved Minecraft from the Wither Storm. Day 331 was definitely a busy day. That night, I headed back to my Enderman farm, and I had a few people comment on my last video about making my Enderman farm more efficient, so I closed off the platform, killed off all the Endermen, and placed down some carpets on top of the hoppers to make it easier for me to get all the XP that I can. Once it was fixed, it was time for a part part that I wasn't looking forward to, releasing all the Endermen. I knew as soon as I broke down the wall, all the Endermen would begin sprinting towards Voltorf the Endermite. But then something even worse happened. You remember when I said that I was really far away from being a professional Minecrafter? Yeah, this was definitely the closest encounter with death that I experienced in this world. After killing off all the Endermen, I made my way back to the wall and released them. And luckily, I wasn't knocked off into the void. After all my tools were squeaky clean, I headed back to the overworld and down into my mine. After spending the next 5 days mining, I had almost another stack and a half of diamonds to add to my collection. With 59 diamond blocks, I probably needed just one more good mining session to accomplish my first goal. Satisfied with my progress, I made it back home, and when I walked through my door, I smacked my face into a wall of obsidian. I knew that it was Herobrine up to something. I went in and checked on Ruben, and after knowing that he was fine, I turned to find walls of obsidian covering up my storage area. You know how you can get towers for your cats to climb around on? Well, similarly, Ruben really loves to climb on top of my potion stands for some reason, and he didn't even pay Herobrine any attention. Luckily, my dragon cam caught Herobrine on video, placing down all of the obsidian, and then Ruben just watched him leave. And if you watch back the security footage, I'm not sure if it's on purpose, but you'll see that Herobrine also stole one of my paintings. So a good trick to get just the right size painting is to place blocks around where you want the painting to actually be. I didn't realize until editing this video that I actually build a lot of things back to back. So I hope you're ready for a little montage of builds. I spent 2 days building this custom tree, 4 days turning this mob farm into an awesome stronghold. I took a little break from building on day 343 to get some basalt, and then I got back to building, spending the rest of that day building this burn up dead tree overlooking my furnace array lava pool. It still feels like it's missing something, but I had way too many mobs coming up to me and asking me for a build tutorial, so I had to just run away. And on day 344, I turned this rocky landscape into a smooth outline for the front of my castle. One of my favorite things in Minecraft is the capability to insta-mine different blocks. I'm trying to get better at covering up all of my torch spam, so as I was heading back to my base to get some green wool, my crosshairs happened to go over the dog that Herobrine set on fire on the night of day 300, and he jokingly named it Hot Dog. Things got even weirder from there. I walked in to find a green sheep in my house named Alex with a question mark. As I continued to search around my base, I found a cow in my basement named Steve with a question mark. I guess those were the only humans that Herobrine really knew before Mojang removed him from the game. On day 348, I headed out to get some more green wool to cover up the torches around my castle foundation. And day 349, I also covered up a lot of the torches around the village. And that night, as I was heading back to my castle foundation to make sure it was well lit, I found that all of the villagers were turned into zombies. So I put them out of their misery before the sun came up. On day 350, it was back to building. I spent the entire day outlining the wall and preparing for a time lapse. Now I knew exactly where to place my blocks, and for this next step, all I would have to do is go up 7 blocks on each side. For big time lapses like this, I'll have to turn my render distance up. Apparently, my new kingdom is wider than 14 chunks. But at least now it's starting to look pretty defended, except for the big hole in the back of the wall. I thought this was a pretty cool fight scene. As I was getting some more stone bricks out of my shulker box for the next go around, I attracted a whole horde of zombies. And I thought I was really safe because I made the top of the staircase 2 blocks high so that way they couldn't get to me. What I didn't anticipate is a spider climbing up the side of the wall and knocking me off. But this part made me feel like a superhero. The first zombie chased me inside the wall, and a second later went flying out dead. Then 7 zombies chase me into the wall, and only I come out as the victor. I still needed to add the design to the top of the wall, but after spending so long building, I was ready for some exploration. I headed on over to my rocket crafting station, and this Enderman was still just chilling in my farm. I really hope he's not interfering with the efficiency of it. After crafting up about 3 stacks of rockets, I was ready to take to the skies. I have a lot more builds that I want to do in the future, so I figured I could really benefit from getting some scaffolding, and I knew the best place to find scaffolding would be a jungle. I never really flew far behind my castle, so I figured figured it would be a new direction to explore. Not too far away, I found a flower biome. I stopped to pick some flowers, and I came across a bee nest with 3 bees flying around it. I knew I couldn't pass up this opportunity, so I flew back to my base and grabbed a campfire. And just so I wouldn't have to fly back home for different things in the future, I decided to put a stack of wood and a stack of cobblestone in my ender chest. After unloading my flowers, I headed back to find the bees. That's when the sun started to set, so I wanted to get my bees and get home as soon as possible. I used a red tulip to lure them back to their home and put the campfire underneath so that the bees wouldn't attack me when I break their home. Then I flew back home and made sure to swing by my beacon so I could regenerate my health from stepping on the campfire. On the morning of day 356, I actually set out to find the jungle. And to save on electro durability and rockets, whenever I came to any oceans, I just sailed across. After traveling quite a ways away from my base, it was really awesome to finally see a jungle render in the distance. And not all jungles have bamboo forests, so I was super excited to see the tops of bamboo as I got closer. After chopping down about 4 stacks of bamboo, I knew that I could grow more at home, so I set out to explore a little bit to see what else I could find. I did chop down a single jungle tree so I could get cocoa beans and jungle tree saplings to bring back to my base. You can obviously tower up with scaffolding, but I was curious if you could tower up with bamboo. Turns out you can. After getting a couple saplings, I continued exploring and came across a panda. This was actually the very first time I ever fed a panda. They are so adorable. Then I realized that there's one more animal that I would love to see in the jungle, a parrot. So I started gathering up some seeds, and after getting into a fight with a skeleton from a nearby cave, I found this cute little guy. Unfortunately, the skeleton had a friend. I was devastated as I stood in the rubble holding what was left of my parrot friend. I was a little sad, but I figured I could just find another one. It seems like so many friendly mobs die because of me. Anyway, that night I got some iron from my ender chest and started collecting vines from the treetops where it was safe from mobs. The next morning I made a new little bird friend, and I noticed a smoke trail in the distance. Being in the middle of a jungle, I was a little worried about that, but upon closer inspection, it was actually a village. This village didn't really have a lot of good loot, so I went around just stealing all their pumpkins. What they did have though is a lot of kids, which they apparently keep in food troughs. On day 360, I returned home with my little bird friend and set him up at my kitchen table for now. Day 361, I was ready to complete my first goal with one last mining session. After repairing my silk touch pickaxe, I realized I forgot to take rockets with me, and I was too lazy to get them out of my ender chest, so for the first time in a while, I had to climb up this water stream. And after a few days of mining, I had a little over a stack of diamonds, and I knew that that would be more than enough. With over a stack of diamond blocks, I accomplished my first goal for this video, and I was on my way to getting a full diamond beacon. Once I made it back up to the surface, I spent the next 2 days crafting up a lot of health potions while organizing my chests. And now Ruben wasn't the only one that liked playing on my brewing stands. Once all the potions were crafted, I cleaned out one of my shulker boxes and filled it completely with health potions. And now Steve is starting to jump on stuff. Once I was able to make it past him, I put my box of potions in my ender chest. With my first goal complete, I needed to start to work towards my second one, raiding a woodland mansion. And to get there, I would need some more rockets. So I headed over to my rocket workshop. I grabbed some gunpowder, but the sugarcane was still yet to be harvested, so I headed back to my base and got some of the extra paper that I keep in my ender chest. I figured 2 stacks of rockets would have to be enough, and I headed on over to my villager trading hall to get another map from the cartographer. And I think some endermen have been in here as well. I don't know why, but I thought I would have enough emeralds to unlock the woodland mansion map. Unfortunately, I did not. So I had to spend a lot of time trading iron for emeralds. Once I locked out the empty maps, I started buying Ocean Explorer maps, which actually leveled them up a lot faster, until finally I had a map that would lead me to my next goal. On day 370, I soared out of my base in search for the woodland mansion. And after getting a little bit lost, no more than last time, I was excited to see the woodland mansion render in the distance. I circled around the building looking for the front entrance, and of course the woodland mansions are not lit up well, so I was greeted with a lot of mobs. As I turned one of the many corners in the mansion, I ran into a Vindicator, and as I defeated him, I noticed that there was flames coming from behind him. I haven't really explored a lot of mansions before, so I was curious what it was coming from. And as I got closer, I realized it was Herobrine with a flint and steel, setting a fire in a building made mostly out of wood and wool in the middle of the forest. I was absolutely terrified. I ran up and tried to put the flame out with my totem of undying, but since mobs kept attacking me, when I turned back around, the flames had begun to spread. I tried my best to run around and finish exploring the mansion before it burnt to the ground, but it was really hard to avoid the flames. I actually did pretty good against this guy and his swarm of Vexes, but I almost got killed by a creeper. The creeper did open up a hole to a floor that was a little less on fire, so I jumped down, but there was even more creepers down there, and I saw Herobrine run by, still lighting the place on fire. Of course, the one place that wasn't burnt down was the spider spawner room. Luckily, because of the cobblestone outline of the build, the fire didn't spread too much to the forest. And once the fire was mostly out, it was actually kind of easy to find all the chests, as well as this dragon egg looking thing, which actually had a diamond block inside. Once I got all the loot that I could find in the woodland mansion, I flew out and turned around to see what damage the fire did, and let's just say it was a lot. I was also a little worried because the fire was starting to spread to the forest, so I knew I had to fly away and have those chunks unload. It took me about a day to find my way back home, and day 375 I spent unloading everything and reorganizing some of my chests. On the morning of day 376, I threw on some golden boots and headed into the Nether. I made my way back to the Nether fortress. Remember when I got trapped in there? I then spent the next several days hunting down blazes for blaze rods to make potions, and wither skeletons to get some of their skulls. I did have a few close calls, and I spent a lot of my healing items, but eventually I had a good amount of blaze rods and 3 more wither skulls, which I could use to get that special star to build another beacon to place on top of all my diamonds. When I made it back to the overworld, I threw all my junk items onto my cactus. It kind of became my new way of getting rid of junk. I threw the rest of my stuff into a chest and got some more health items and went to get some sleep. Day 384, I traveled a little bit away from my base to find some horses to bring back and add them to a new build. I made this nice big horse cart with a good place to sit and a good place for storage. Now I could travel in style. On day 385, after fixing my elytra at the Enderman farm, I threw all the ender pearls into my cactus and set sail for warmer waters. I wanted to find a coral reef so I could use the coral for some builds. As I flew and sailed along, I scanned the ocean floor for any sunken treasure. I found a treasure map that led me to a nearby island, and after a little while of digging around for the treasure, I used F3 and G to find the center of the chunk, which led me straight to the chest. And luckily right by that island was the coral reef. After grabbing all that I could carry with an already pretty full inventory, I began sailing home, but after a little while to save some time, I flew the rest of the way and returned home on the night of day 389. I spent the next 2 days gathering up leaves and getting some oak wood to use them to decorate my landscape. I got my first stack of diamond blocks for a beacon, raided a now burned down woodland mansion, so my last goal for this video was to bring a gift to Herobrine and hopefully become his friend. I spent day 392 gathering up different resources to gift to Herobrine, and I also wrote a little note on a piece of paper asking him for a truce. On day 393, after crafting up some rockets, I set out for Herobrine's base. When I arrived back to his base, it didn't seem like much had changed, but I was very concerned as I got closer and saw that the virus or whatever Herobrine had in his base was spreading. I did not want to stick around, and I also didn't want to get jump scared again, so I quickly set his gift down and flew away. Once I made it home, I was ready for bed. With less than a Minecraft week left, I spent day 395 and 96 fishing in some different places. I think on top of my iron farm tower was probably my favorite place, but I also tried fishing where the villagers normally go to fish, as well as fishing as close to my hook as possible. On day 397, I didn't know if I'd see Herobrine again in these last few days, so I was going to spend the rest of my time decorating the landscape around my base. I added some coral to my dead tree, and it was kind of sad watching the coral die, but it did make my tree look really cool. Then with the vines I got from the jungle, I crafted up some mossy cobblestone to build big rocks around my land. I placed down a lot of leaves to make bushes, and I also built some custom little trees. On day 400, I rode Coco around looking at all of my progress. My builds were all starting to really come together, and with the little bit of time that I had left, I decided to head over to my kingdom walls and add some custom trees in there. But as I came up the hill, I saw a new pile of something had formed right where my castle is supposed to go. And as I got closer, I realized it was Herobrine standing on all the resources that I just gave him. And on top, 4 pieces of soul sand in a T formation. I really should have put those wither skulls in my ender chest. But for now, I'm just happy that I survived 400 days in mega ultra hardcore Minecraft. Special thanks for Luke the Notable for starting the 100 days trend, my patrons for your continued support, and you for watching. And don't forget to follow me on all my social media and subscribe so you don't miss out on anything. Links in the description. Thanks again for watching.